I'll start by asking a question. Who is stronger, or which is stronger? Is it the wind or the sun? Which of the two can claim to be stronger? One day, these two elements of nature were arguing who between the two of them is stronger. The wind said, I can blow and so much damage can be, I can cause so much damage. Ships would sink into the ocean because of me. Roofs of houses get destroyed because of me. I am stronger. The sun, on the other hand, said, well, it's not really my intention, but because of the heat coming from me, so many people suffer from heat stroke. The wind was not convinced. He said, I am stronger. You notice that when it's hot, people use electric fan, and then the heat vanishes. But the sun disagreed. No matter how many electric fans there are in a room, if it's hot, it's still hot. I am stronger. So the argument went on and on. The sun even saying that just to show you that I am stronger, in eternal life, we are punished using heat, or God uses heat to punish us. So they agreed to settle their argument through a contest. The contest was who can convince this person wearing a thick coat to take off that coat. First, it was the turn of the wind. The wind blew, but the man clung to his coat very tenaciously. The wind blew harder and harder, but then the man much more tenaciously clung to his coat. And so the wind gave up. Now it was the sun. It was the sun's turn to convince this person to take off his coat. First, it was 25 degrees centigrade. Then it became 27. Then it became 29. And then it became plus 30. And then the man had to take off his coat, even if the sun did not apply force. What's the moral of the story? The moral is gentle persuasion can be stronger compared to the use of brute force. If you try to convince a person, well, do so gently. If you do it with force, chances are you may not be effective. I am reminded of this anecdote. I think that's from Aesop, the fables of Aesop. I'm reminded of this fable in view of the gospel reading. How do you correct someone whom you perceive to be doing something wrong? The Lord gave specific instructions. First, go to that person. Talk to him in private. Second, if he doesn't listen to you, bring some witnesses. And if he still doesn't listen to you and the witnesses, then tell the church, tell the community. And if he still doesn't listen to the community, then treat him like a publican. I'll explain later on what is meant by that phrase. Treat him like a publican or a tax collector. In other words, don't use force. Convince that person. Reach out to the conscience of that person. Do everything possible to convince that person. But never, never use force. Because using force is, in the end, counterproductive. You try to use force on your subordinates or on your children, for those of you who have families. Chances are the values are not really ingrained. It's possible that your subordinates or your children will follow the rules, but the values are not ingrained in their hearts. It's in the long run ineffective. So, gentle persuasion is much more effective than the use of brute force. This lesson, I think, is learned or should have been learned by Filipinos. In our history, there was this Marcos dictatorship before. So many used arms to fight against the dictatorship. I have much respect for these people, by the way. Some went to the hills to take up arms. But in the end, it was only when people showed, in 1986, when people showed that they are capable of sacrificing themselves, it was only then that the dictatorship crumbled. Again, the use of force is not effective, not always, or generally ineffective. Now, what has this got to do with the celebration, Mary, co-redeemer? The personality of Mary, we can reflect on that. Mary was firm, but also compassionate. There has to be a combination of firmness and compassion. Mary was compassionate. This is seen when in the wedding at Cana, she was very sensitive to the possible embarrassment of the newly wedded couple. She said to her son, "Son, they have no more wine." That's sensitivity. That is compassion. But Mary was also firm. She proclaimed God who cast down the mighty from their thrones and lifts up the lowly. A God who sends the hungry empty and fills the poor. Such proclamation could not have been uttered by someone who was a weakling, but she proclaimed a God who showed strength. But she never used force. She also was compassionate. How do we deal with people whom we perceive to have done something wrong? One very specific suggestion is do not become the evil that you are fighting against. I repeat, do not become the evil that you are fighting against. Take the case of that extrajudicial killing. There's no question that drug addiction is wrong. There's no question that drug addicts can wreak havoc on the community. But when we kill these people, we are actually becoming what we are fighting against. We think that we are right and they are wrong. But then we are using what is wrong to fight this evil. So, kinsa naman atong saligan? If we say, if we go to the judges, dugay kayo. But then the gospel is very clear. Approach him first individually. Bring witnesses. Then report him to the community. Jesus never said, if that person still doesn't listen, then kill him. Patience and gentle persuasion. Now, it is written here, if he refused to listen even to the church, then treat him as you would a Gentile or tax collector. Biblical scholars are actually uh, engaged in a debate on the meaning of this. Treat him as you would a Gentile or a tax collector. Does it mean that you treat him the way tax collectors were in fact treated then? Or does it mean treat him the way Jesus treated tax collectors? What's the meaning? Treat him as you would a tax collector. I used to interpret this to mean treat him the way tax collectors were in fact treated. But now I am convinced that actually the meaning here is treat him the way Jesus would treat tax collectors. But in any way, never use violence. Continue to be patient. The Blessed Virgin Mary was patient. You might imagine the Blessed Virgin Mary as someone who did not suffer much. After all, she was lucky to be chosen to be the mother of God. So her life must have been full of glorious events. But I think that imagination is rather faulty. Why? Because Mary had to suffer much. She was the mother of someone who lived a very radical lifestyle. Who's, she was a mother of someone who dared to be different. And I could imagine neighbors of Mary saying, Maria, kanay mong anak no, sige lang gid naglalis ang mga Pariseo. Maria, tell your son to get married so that he could live a normal human life. And it was difficult, must have been very difficult for Mary. But then, while remaining firm, she did not fight evil with evil. She did not fight rumors with rumors. She continued to live her life with dignity. That, I think, is a lesson we can learn from this gospel reading, a lesson we can learn from the life of Mary, and a lesson we can learn from the life of Jesus himself.